Hello everyone, I welcome you all to this session on Dover Beach. This is a poem which is written by Matthew Arnold, first of all, and he was a British poet. He belonged to the Victorian era, and his timeline ranges from 1822 to 1888. I would like to conduct this session both in English and Hindi so that people are able to understand it better and able to decipher it better. तो मैं हिंदी और इंग्लिश दोनों में बात करूँगी। तो पहले मैं हमारे राइटर हमारे पोएट मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड के बारे में थोड़ा सा इंट्रोडक्शन दूंगी एंड आपको बताऊंगी कि वो क्यों इतने क्रिटिकल एक्यूमेन के थे एंड व्हाई ही हैड सच अ क्रिटिकल आई एंड व्हाट वाज द इम्पैक्ट of his past life experiences. I mean his experiences previously before he started writing. So, Matthew Arnold first held the position as an inspector of schools for 35 years. 35 साल तक मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड ने एक इंस्पेक्टर ऑफ स्कूल्स वाली पोजीशन हेल्ड की थी एंड वो जगह जगह जाते थे एज एन इंस्पेक्टर एंड वो चीज़ों को इंस्पेक्ट करते थे. So what happened that in his travels, in his explorations, he came across a lot of people. He talked to a lot of people, and he got to know about them. कि वो डेली लाइफ पे कैसे रहते हैं, उनकी वो किन चीज़ों से गुजरते हैं, उन्हें किस तरह की परेशानियाँ आती हैं, वो किस तरह से खुशियाँ मनाते हैं. So he got to know about the daily lives of people. He got to know about what troubled them. He got to know about the very minute aspects of these very ordinary and common people. And perhaps this position that he held as an inspector, due to which he had to travel to so many places, that gave him an understanding, a better understanding of the lives of the people of the common England, not the aristocrats, not the elite masses, but the common people. तो जो आम आदमी हैं उनकी लाइफ्स में किस तरह की घटनाएं होती हैं, हमारे मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड को ये चीज़ बहुत बारीकी से इस उस दौरान में पता चली. So here you can see that due to this job, I mean that he got the chance to spend a lot of time in public situations, getting to acquaint himself with several people, their aspirations and grievances both. यही बात मैंने अभी पहले भी कही है और यही चीज़ उनके वर्क में भी फिर दिखती है. तो आप लोग जानते ही होंगे दैट कि हमारे जो भी राइटर्स होते हैं उनके ऊपर उनकी हिस्ट्री का, उनके जो पास्ट एक्सपीरियंसेस हैं, वो किन लोगों के साथ उठते हैं बैठते हैं, किस तरह की एक्सपीरियंसेस गेन करते हैं, किस तरह की उनकी विचारधाराएं हैं और किस तरह की हिस्टोरिकल डिटेल्स में वो फ्लरिश करते हैं, ये सब चीज़ें उनके वर्क्स पे बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पैक्ट करती हैं. तो यही मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड के साथ भी हुआ होगा और इसी वजह से उनकी जो भी उनके वर्क्स हैं, his works, that is why his works reflect a lot of that critical understanding of the daily life of the pains of what was going on in and around him, that got reflected in his works. This becomes a very important reason. Okay. So Matthew Arnold, his first work was The Strayed Reveller. दिस इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. उनका जो पहला वर्क था वो एक जो वर्क उनका था वो एक फर्स्ट वर्क ऑफ पोइट्री था फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, एंड उसका नाम था द स्ट्रेड रेवलर, जो कि 1849 में पब्लिश हुआ था. उसके बाद मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड ने बहुत सारे और वर्क्स लिखे. ही रोट द स्कॉलर जिप्सी इन 1853, ही रोट कल्चर एंड नाकी 1869, लिटरेचर एंड डॉगमा इन 1873, एंड देन डॉवर बीच जो हम अभी पढ़ रहे हैं इन 1867. तो आर्नल्ड जब बॉर्न हुए थे तो वो एक ऐसी फैमिली में बॉर्न हुए थे जहाँ पे बहुत सारे लोग हेडमास्टर्स थे, एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर्स थे, एंड लिटरेरी स्पेस में भी बहुत ज़्यादा लोग उनके फैमिली में आस-पास जान पहचान में थे. सो ही गॉट acquainted with a lot of people who, especially his brothers, they were in the literary space, and he got to know about the intricacies of what it is to be a writer. So from there also that literary perspective came into him. And Arnold then grew on to become a sage writer. He is termed as a sage writer, which you can quote. And he was someone who chastises people on contemporary issues, which is very important that he did not talk about simply about issues that were dead or issues that were no longer relevant. He talked about actual, real, factual issues that were very much there in the society, and he wanted to people to know about them. So, what kind of issues we are talking? Um, तो हम यहाँ पे किस तरह के इश्यूज़ के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं? The issues that we are talking about were prevalent in the Victorian era. We have to remember that Arnold was a poet of the Victorian era, and he was primarily affected by the infamous conflict between science and religion, as everyone knows. That conflict, to those who don't know, was the conflict between the fact that people were now becoming more and more industrialized and mechanized. लोग अब इस दौर में, जो कि इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन अपने पीक पे था, जहाँ पे मशीन ज़्यादा आ चुकी थी, जहाँ पे लोग बहुत ज़्यादा साइंस में बिलीव करने लगे थे, जहाँ पे डार्विन की ऑन द ओरिजिन ऑफ स्पीशीज़ पब्लिश हुई थी, जहाँ पे ये बोला गया था दैट गॉड इज़ नॉट द क्रिएटर ऑफ मैन, एवोल्यूशन ऑन द अदर हैंड इज़ द क्रिएटर ऑफ मैन. सो जहाँ पे इस तरह की थियोरीज आ रही थी, जहाँ पे भगवान का जो एक रोल था, एक इम्पोर्टेंस जो सालों सालों से लोगों के माइंड में थी, वो ख़त्म हो रही थी. तो एक ऐसे दौर में जहाँ लोग साइंस पे ज़्यादा विश्वास कर रहे थे और धर्म पे या एक जो विश्वास होता है भगवान पे या स्पिरिचुअलिटी पे, वो ख़त्म हो रहा था. So in such an era was Arnold writing, right? So what kind of issues were there? It was not just that this conflict was the only thing that he was writing about. Of course, there were many other issues that were related to this very fact, and I will discuss them later in this presentation also. But you have to remember that these were the contemporary issues that Arnold situated himself around, and these were the issues of his times, the modern times, of the people that of people uh, in their day-to-day lives. Okay. Um, right. So now moving on towards the poem. What is the poem overall about? Dover Beach, which is the title of our poem, was published in the collection New Poems in 1867, right? So ये डोवर बीच एक सिंगल पोएम है जो एक लार्जर कलेक्शन आर्नल्ड ने पब्लिश किया था 1867 में, उसमें से एक पोएम है. एंड 37 लाइन्स है इस पोएम के अंदर, और इसकी जो राइम स्कीम है ये स्टेबल नहीं है, विच मीन्स देर इज़ नॉट वन पर्टिकुलर राइम स्कीम विच इज़ फॉलोड थ्रू आउट द पोएम, रादर इट इज़ unstable. And this really reflects, if you think about it in a very detailed manner, this reflects the psyche of the modern man in those times, right? Not even the modern man, but like not technically the modern man, but in spirit definitely you can say that we were moving towards modernism. So this unstable rhyme scheme, this stability that was not there, really reflects the psyche of what people were going through. This can be the symbol that you can or you may take from this particular thing. ये एक symbol हो सकता है. तो ये जो राइम स्कीम है जिसमें कोई स्टेबिलिटी नहीं है, दिस कैन रियली बी अ सिंबल फॉर द अनसर्टेनिटी, द nature or the unstable nature of the times in which Arnold was writing, right? तो ये एक सिंबल आप ले सकते हैं कि जिस तरह के टाइम में आर्नल्ड लिख रहे थे वहाँ पे वैसे भी कोई स्टेबिलिटी नहीं थी, कोई कोहेजन नहीं था. तो राइम स्कीम भी नेचुरली जिस तरह से राइटर्स लिखेंगे वो भी एक बहुत ज़्यादा अनस्टेबल तरीका ही होगा. दिस कैन बी वन symbol that we can take away from this particular rhyme scheme. Now, these are some of the crucial historical details which I think they are not really very much mentioned in the poem anywhere, but they do form an important backdrop in order to realize the kind of uh, events that were happening around Arnold that perhaps prompted him to think all those thoughts that he is thinking about in this particular poem, right? So the French Revolution, first of all, everyone knows that it was a big revolution. It was triggered by the storming of the Bastille prison. तो जो फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन हुआ था वो एक रेवोल्यूशन था जो फ्रांस में हुआ था, जहाँ पे लोग अपनी लिबर्टी, क्वालिटी एंड फ्रेटर्निटी, इन सभी चीज़ों को जाहिर कर रहे थे. एंड इन सभी चीज़ों का इम्पोर्टेंस इस फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन से, जो कि हुआ था 1787 से 1799 तक, लोगों ने इन सभी चीज़ों को इस्टेब्लिश किया था. यही फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन बाद में जाके रोमांटिसिज्म को ट्रिगर करता है, एंड रोमांटिसिज्म के बाद आता है विक्टोरियन एज. तो आप एक तरह से कह सकते हैं we can somewhere say that Arnold is probably reminiscing, or he's somewhere or the other feeling nostalgic about the life that was triggered immediately after the French Revolution. That there was peace, there was a return to nature, and there was such a serene time for everyone. बट नाउ इन कंट्रास्ट टू द विक्टोरियन एज एवरीथिंग इज़ इन केओस. तो फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन के बाद जो रोमांटिसिज्म था, कि शायद से आर्नल्ड उस चीज़ के बारे में भी कहीं ना कहीं मन ही मन में सोच रहे होंगे, बिकॉज आर्नल्ड फ्रेंच कल्चर से एंड फ्रेंच एजुकेशन सिस्टम के ऊपर उन्होंने कुछ वर्क्स भी लिखे हैं. वो फ्रेंच और फ्रांस से इन जनरल काफ़ी ज़्यादा इंस्पायर रहते थे. तो फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन सबसे पहले उसके जो इम्पैक्ट्स थे वो आके ख़त्म हो चुके थे, एंड आर्नल्ड परहैप्स उसे एक चीज़ को याद करते हुए कहीं न कहीं ये कंट्रास्ट भी अननोइंगली ड्रॉ करते हैं कि एक फ्रेंच आइडियलिज़्म जो था, फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन का जो आइडियलिज़्म था, विक्टोरियन एज की जो आज रियलिटी है, उसके बीच में बहुत शार्प कंट्रास्ट दिखता है. So there were other events also, like the Second Opium War and the Second Franco-Mexican War, that happened, as I've mentioned, in these particular timelines. These wars that Arnold was surrounded by definitely would have had an impact on him, on his psyche, and also on the psyche of people around him. There were many conflicts everywhere, and in the Victorian era, though the British really expanded their reach in the colonies and everywhere else, this conflict that was there in the internal system, this is very much the forte of Arnold. ये जो internal conflict, जो internal struggles इंग्लैंड में चल रहे हैं, उनके लोगों के दिमाग में चल रहे हैं, ये आर्नल्ड बहुत ज़्यादा अच्छे से अपने वर्क्स में दिखाते हैं. तो अब हमने ये इस्टेब्लिश कर लिया है कि किस तरह के इवेंट्स आर्नल्ड अपने लाइफ में सराउंड होते थे, एंड किस तरह की पोएम है डोवर्बिश. सो नाउ वी विल नाउ कंटिन्यू टूवर्ड्स द पोएम. तो अब हम जब डोवर बीच पे आते हैं, when we come to the poem, it begins like this, and notice the particularly striking detail with which Arnold begins his poem. The sea is calm tonight, right? The sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits. ये जो एक डिस्क्रिप्शन है, what do you notice here? It is a description of a nature, of the nature, right? And this description is very peaceful, that the sea is calm, the tide is full, the moon lies fair. The moon lies fair, which means that the moonlight is shining brightly upon the streets, right? The sea is very calm, there is no commotion, there is no chaos, and the tide is also full. So the waves are also in their full spirit. तो एक बहुत ही काम एटमॉस्फेयर हम आर्नल्ड को यहाँ पे डिपिक्ट करते हुए देखते हैं, जहाँ पे चाँद भी है, जहाँ पे सी जो है हमारा वो भी बहुत ही शांत तरह है, शांत तरीके में है. और जो फ्रेंच कोस्ट है, अब यहाँ पे हम देखते हैं कि आर्नल्ड यहाँ पे फ्रेंच कोस्ट की बात कर रहे हैं. नाउ आर्नल्ड हैज शिफ्टेड टू मेंशनिंग अबाउट द फ्रेंच कोस्ट. So जहाँ पे आर्नल्ड खड़े हैं, where Arnold is standing, perhaps it is that area when you will see about Dover Beach, you will see that Dover Beach is a kind of area where you can also see the French coast. So Arnold is probably standing there, and it might have been derived from a definitely real experience that he would have had. So he's standing there and he's seeing that the light on the French coast is gleaming. So there's a light, वहाँ पे एक light है, वो चमक रही है, शायद वो चमक रही है, फिर जा रही है, फिर चमक रही है, फिर जा रही है. तो वो इस चीज़ को महसूस कर रहे हैं, एंड इस चीज़ को वहाँ दिखा रहे हैं यहाँ पे. ही सेज दैट द क्लिफ्स ऑफ इंग्लैंड स्टैंड. तो अब ये इस कंट्रास्ट में बताते हैं कि वो फ्रेंच कोस्ट के बारे में पहले तो बताते हैं, एंड देन ही टॉक्स अबाउट द क्लिफ्स ऑफ इंग्लैंड. ही सेज that the French coast, on the French coast, the light gleams and is gone, and now the cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast. तो वो इन दोनों चीज़ों के बीच में कंट्रास्ट प्रेजेंट करते हैं, फ्रांस और इंग्लैंड के बीच में, एंड ही इज डिस्क्राइबिंग द नेचुरल सीनरी अराउंड हिम. ही इज जस्ट डिस्क्राइबिंग राइट नाउ out in the tranquil bay. So whatever he is seeing, is witnessing, it is filled with a very serene kind of a atmosphere, and an atmosphere, and it is, everything is very tranquil, everything is very peaceful. So this is the main thing that you have to take away from this stanza, that the peaceful scenery is described here. Okay, this is very important right now to notice, because we'll soon see how Arnold is going to build a very sharp contrast to this peaceful environment that he's presenting right now in the very first stanza. He will uh, present this contradiction later on. तो हमें अभी ये नोट करना है कि इस स्टैंजा में, अभी ये पूरा स्टैंजा नहीं है, इस हाफ स्टैंजा में एक नेचुरल सीनरी के बारे में आर्नल्ड हमें दिखा रहे हैं. Okay, he is establishing the mood of the poem, which is very important here, that Arnold is establishing the mood of the poem. Okay, right. Now, continuing on in this stanza, we see there is an inclusion of a dialogue here. Okay, come to the window, sweet is the night air. What does Arnold mean by come to the window? He is imploring someone, वो किसी को request कर रहे हैं that window पे आओ. Probably and most probably it is his lover, because later on we'll also see that he is mentioning in a very clear cut manner that. So slowly he implores a particular person. He says that come to the window, sweet is the night air, and it is most probably it is his lover, because we see in the later lines that he says, ah, love, let us be true. So it is most probably his lover. uh, there's an interplay of dialogue which I've already mentioned here, and he says, come to the window, sweet is the night air, only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon blanched land. Listen, you hear the grating roar. In these lines, he's basically describing once again, you can see the alliteration of long and long line here. This is a figure of speech of alliteration. He says that only this land, which is completely covered by moonlight, is meeting the sea, and there's a long line of spray when the waves come and splash at the shore, and you can then hear these waves going back into the sea, and there is a grating roar. This is a figure of speech, this is auditory imagery, and we can almost hear as readers the sound of the waves crashing at the shore and then going back, and there's this sharp edgy sound. So यहाँ पे पोएट क्या कहते हैं कि जब हम एक समुद्र के किनारे होते हैं, एक सी के किनारे होते हैं, तो जब जो लहरें होती हैं वो आके शोर पे जब टकराती हैं, तो वो जब वापस जाती हैं टकराने के बाद, तो एक ग्रेटिंग साउंड आती है, एक ऐसी तराशी हुई साउंड आती है जिसे आप अपने कानों से भी सुन सकते हैं एज रीडर्स. तो यह आर्नल्ड की एक बहुत बड़ी खूबी है एज अ पोएट, एंड दैट ही कैन ऑलमोस्ट मेक अस अंडरस्टैंड एज रीडर्स what he is hearing at that moment, right? He says, listen, you hear the grating roar. Listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand, begin and cease and then again begin, with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. सो यहाँ पे जो हमारे पोएट कह रहे हैं, ये बेसिकली ये कह रहे हैं कि जब भी आप लहरों को देखते हैं, वो शोर पे आती हैं, वो बहुत तेज़ी से आती हैं, और उतनी तेज़ी से जो शोर पे जो पत्थर होते हैं, जो कंकड़ होते हैं, उन्हें वो अपने साथ ले जाती हैं जब वो सी में वापस जाते हैं. बट फिर से वो साइकिल शुरू होती है जहाँ पे वो लहरें फिर से उछलती हैं, फिर से शोर पे क्रैश होती हैं किनारे पे, और फिर से वो पेबल्स वापस उसी जगह पे एक फ्लिंग मोशन के साथ वहाँ पे दोबारा आ जाते हैं, और ये एक साइकिल कंटिन्यू हो रही है, राइट? सो दिस इज अ साइकिल दैट द पोएट इज टॉकिंग अबाउट हियर, एंड समवेयर और द अदर इज कंपेयरिंग इट इन, और वी कैन कंपेयर इट टू द साइकिल ऑफ लाइफ. ओके, because the cycle of life also has many ups and downs, and it never ceases, right? There can be many ups and downs, there can be sorrow as well as pain as well as happiness, but it never ceases. Okay, so the poet is describing that particular motion which is very rhythmic, and with tremulous cadence slow, he's talking about the rhythm that is brought to his mind by this coming of the waves crashing on the shore, then they are drawing the pebbles which are on the shore with them, and then when they are again coming back at the shore uh, after meeting into the sea, and this cycle is continuing. So all of this is making the poet feel a kind of a rhythm, which he is then comparing to the eternal note of sadness. This music, this musicality, this is a very melancholic kind of tone, which is reminding the poet of many sad times of the entire humanity. And then he will compare this eternal note of sadness to something that people all along the ages have observed and felt. तो जो पोएट हमारे कहते हैं कि ये जो साइकिल है, ये उनके दिमाग में एक बहुत ही दुखी तरह की एक एक गाने को कहीं न कहीं शेप देती है। तो वो इस पर्टिकुलर स्टैंज़ा में इस चीज़ के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं। Okay, so he's describing the waves, he's describing the pattern, the way they rise, the way they draw back, the way they carry the pebbles, and how they crash, and how all of this is bringing a kind of a musical tone in his mind, and how he's thinking about a lot of things when he hears this kind of a tone. Okay, so when we come to the next stanza, this is a very important stanza because you can see, because here we have the mention of Sophocles and the Aegean, right? These are classical mentions, and we can right. So in this stanza, there are these classical mentions of Sophocles and the Aegean, and basically the poet is again comparing and talking about the cycle of life, right? The cycle of time, and how time never ceases and time always continues. The reason why he mentions Sophocles in this particular stanza is because he's saying that I'll give you a gist first after reading the stanza. Let's read it. That Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. So, the poet here is comparing what he is hearing right now at this moment to the sound and the tone that Sophocles would have also heard long back, years back, eons back on the Aegean, right? And it too would have produced in his mind the same melancholic tone and the same music of sorrow that is being produced in the mind of Arnold as of now. Okay, so he is again, just notice the cyclic kind of words that he is using, the turbid ebb and flow, right, which I talked about, that human life is like having lots of ebbs and flows and lots of highs and lows. It is just like the waves, so you can compare the rising of the waves and the falling of the waves to the happiness and sorrow of human life. Okay, so this cyclic nature is again evident in the entirety of the poem. Okay, so he's saying that Sophocles would have also heard it on the Aegean. Sophocles जो एक बहुत क्लासिकल रेफरेंस में बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट नाम है, तो ही इज़ मेंशनिंग हिम बिकॉज वो स्पेसिफिकली सोफोक्लिस को क्यों मेंशन करेंगे ये भी मैं बता दे रही हूँ, बिकॉज सोफोक्लिस वाज नोन टू हैव रिटन वेरी सैड एंड मेलानकलिक प्लेस, राइट? तो हमारे पोएट स्टैंजा में यही कह रहे हैं कि ये जो साउंड है इसमें इतनी ताकत है कि ये मेरे माइंड में एक थॉट प्रोड्यूस कर रही है, एंड यही थॉट सोफोक्लिस भी ये सोच रहे होंगे जब वो एजेंट पे खड़े होंगे और वो ये सब देख रहे होंगे, जो वेव्स का आना जाना, क्योंकि सी तो हर जगह है, सी एक ही तरह से काम भी करता है, तो जब वेव्स को आते जाते टकराते देख रहे होंगे और ये जो साउंड प्रोड्यूस हो रही होगी ये वैसी ही साउंड है, और ये उनके माइंड में उसी तरह के सौरों में ला रही होगी जो आज मेरे माइंड में आ रही है। तो वो अपने आप को सोफोक्लिस के एक्सपीरियंस से कंपेयर कर रहे हैं और कह रहे हैं कि टाइम बीत चुका है, सब कुछ बीत चुका है, मगर जो एक ह्यूमन लाइफ है, जो एक ह्यूमन मिजरी है, वो आज भी कहीं ना कहीं है। और आज भी जो मैं ये इस डिस्टेंट नदंसी पे सुन रहा हूँ, सोफोक्लिस सालों पहले एजेंट पे सुन रहे होंगे। जगह अलग अलग हैं बट हमारी जो फीलिंग्स एक्सपीरियंसेस हैं वो सेम ही हैं, और हम वही सोच रहे हैं जो कि आज मैं सोच रहा हूँ, दैट इज़ द eternal note of sadness, that the human misery is something which is eternal and it never ceases, right? आज के टाइम में भी हमारे पास बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं जिस पे हम बहुत प्राउड होते हैं, बट everyone is facing some other thing, and this is what we can also feel at this very moment. When you go to any sea or beach side, and when you hear the waves crashing, and when you hear that music, it too will produce in your mind, you know, some very sublime thoughts. So this is what the poet is talking about in this stanza. Now the next stanza, here the poet mentions in a very clear cut manner that he's talking about the sea of faith. So now he's comparing, and he is very explicitly mentioning that the sea that he is talking about, or maybe that this sea that he saw in reality, is reminding him of the sea of faith, which which was once too at the full and round earth's shore. तो जिस तरह के ये सी यहाँ पे मौजूद है, जो इतना खूबसूरत है, उसी तरह एक बार एक टाइम पे फेथ भी जो थी ह्यूमैनिटी के अंदर बहुत ज़्यादा थी। तो ये वो कह रहे हैं यहाँ पे दैट is saying the sea of faith was also there, which encircled the entire humanity like a girdle. Girdle is a kind of bright um, colored kind of an ornament, and he's saying that एक गर्डल की तरह पूरे के पूरे अर्थ को, यहाँ पे वो किसी पर्टिकुलर इंसान, एक किसी पर्टिकुलर कंट्री के बारे में बात नहीं कर रहे हैं, बल्कि ही इज टॉकिंग अबाउट द इंटायर अर्थ। इज सेइंग दैट द इंटायर अर्थ इज लाइक in was once upon a time shrouded, एक ब्लैंकेट में, एक बहुत ही प्रोटेक्टिव काइंड ऑफ अ ब्लैंकेट, एक प्रोटेक्टिव काइंड ऑफ गर्डल में थी, जो कि फेथ का था, जिसमें सब लोगों के दिलों में, दिमाग में एक फेथ थी। बट नाउ but now I only hear its melancholy long withdrawing roar. So now he is comparing the sea that he is talking about in the previous stanzas to the sea of faith, and he says that now I only hear the sea of faith withdrawing and not existing anymore. Now the sea of faith is only just receding. ठीक है, तो मतलब ये जो सी है वो अब खाली मतलब एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता है लोगों के अंदर। ये जो सी ऑफ फेथ है, ये अब खाली बहुत ही सैड तरह का एक म्यूज़िक प्ले कर रहा है, ये खाली विदड्रॉ हो रहा है, पीछे जा रहा है, एंड ये खाली मेरे माइंड में जिस तरह का सैडनेस ला रहा है, वो उसका मतलब यही है कि अब ये एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता है, फेथ एग्जिस्ट नहीं करती है लोगों के माइंड में, एंड अब ये सी एकदम नॉन एग्जिस्टेंट हो चुका है। ओके, तो अब ये sea of faith, which means the gist of the stanza is that faith is no more there in people's hearts and minds, and the poet is condemning this particular thing and is saying that faith is now no more there. And you have to remind yourself that this is the Victorian age. Okay, so this is very much apt a description. Retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges, drear and naked shingles of the world. So what he's saying in this particular stanza, that when this wave retreats back, right, and we see जब एक लहर जब वापस सी में जाके मिलती है, तो वो जब चली जाती है शोर पे से, तो हम हमारे सामने बहुत सारे छोटे छोटे पेबल्स एंड स्टोन्स विजिबल हो जाते हैं। तो he is comparing those pebbles and stones which we can see after the wave retreats back to the naked shingles of the world, which means that now that the faith has receded, has gone away, we can see the ugliness of humanity, we can see the nakedness of humanity, जो humanity की बुरी साइड है हम उसे देख रहे हैं, right? So this is what he is talking about in this particular stanza, that is comparing even the pebbles to something. So you can see the sharp symbolism that Arnold is making at each and every step. Okay, अब यहाँ पे contrast हम mention करेंगे, ठीक? यहाँ पे contrast आपको देखने को मिलेगा, that यहाँ पे we see that in the first stanza, just a minute, sweet is the night air. Okay, sweet is the night air. This is what he said in the very first stanza. Okay, and then in the very second last penultimate stanza is saying retreating to the breath of the night wind. So you can see the sharp contrast, you can literally see the sharp contrast that the poet is making, because this is depicting his psyche, this is depicting the thoughts that he's having, this is depicting the shift in his emotions, and this is where the mood of the poem really changes around somewhere here. Okay, so remember this in mind, keep this in mind. Then when this stanza ends, this is the last stanza that we have, and this is a very important stanza, not because it is a it is the conclusion, but because here he mentions in a very clear manner that he's talking about perhaps a lover. Okay, so he's saying that, love, let us be true to one another. Love, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams. लव, मैं यहाँ पे तुमसे कहता हूँ कि हमें एक दूसरे से बहुत ही सच्चाई में बात करनी चाहिए, एंड हमें एक दूसरे से ये जो प्यार हमारे बीच से बरकरार रखना चाहिए, बिकॉज ये जो दुनिया हमारे सामने है, it seems to us like a land of dreams. Okay, it seems so beautiful, so new, so various. Okay, it seems कि इसमें कितनी सारी खूबसूरती है, ये कितना नया है. नया क्यों है? बिकॉज हमें याद याद रखना होगा कि विक्टोरियन एज जो है वो धीरे धीरे इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन जो था, इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन का वो पीक था, और उसके बाद क्या आ रहा था? मॉडर्निज्म. तो कहीं ना कहीं लोगों के दिमाग में ये था कि ये जो नई दुनिया हम बसा रहे हैं, ये कहीं ना कहीं बहुत ब्यूटीफुल और वेरियस होने वाली है, बहुत सारी वैरायटी होने वाली है, बहुत सारी चीज़ें इसमें नई होने वाली हैं. इसमें बहुत सारे लोगों के ड्रीम्स थे, बिकॉज ये एक शिफ्ट इन टाइम था, बिकॉज हम मॉडर्निज्म की तरफ ज़्यादा बढ़ रहे थे. तो कहीं ना कहीं आर्नल्ड ने सेंस कर लिया होगा. सो इज सेइंग टू हिज लवर दैट, लव, लेट अस बी ट्रू टू वन अनदर, बिकॉज ये जो दुनिया हमारे सामने एक लैंड ऑफ ड्रीम्स की तरह है, विच सीम सो ब्यूटिफुल, सो वेरियस, सो न्यू, इट डज नॉट रियली हैव जॉय, इट डज नॉट हैव लव नॉर लाइट. इसमें कोई जॉय नहीं है, इसमें कोई प्यार नहीं है, और कोई लाइट नहीं है. ये एक बहुत बड़ा स्टेटमेंट जो आर्नल्ड कह रहे हैं यहाँ पे. ये उनका जो ही इज़ द पोएट ऑफ पेसिमिज्म, राइट. तो ये जो क्वालिटी है वो यहाँ पे बहुत ही क्लियरली मेंशन हो रही है, उनकी यहाँ पे दिख रही है. But more than being a poet of pessimism, he is very real for what he is saying. Okay, you can compare it to the times of today also. The world seems so beautiful at the very expense, but when you really dive deep into it, you can see the ugliness of people. So this world has really neither joy nor love nor light nor certitude. Certitude means certainty. There is no certainty in this world. Anything can happen, anything bad can happen, and nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. So these are war imageries also, if you think about it, which were very much prevalent in those times. So these are very peculiar war imageries, that there is no certainty, nor any peace, nor help for pain. Okay, and we are here as on a darkling plain, darkling thrush. Remember, we are here on as on a darkling plain. This plain, which is literally so sorrowful. We are swept here with confused alarms of struggle and flight. Just see these words, okay? Nor, neither, confused, darkling, struggle, flight, ignorant, clash. So these words are extremely important, and these you can mark to show the reality of the times which Arnold is depicting, and his pessimism, rather his realism also, you can say. Okay, so on this darkling plane, we as humans are confused, and we are swept here and there because we do not know whom we are fighting. We do not know कि हम ये लड़ाइयाँ किस लिए लड़ रहे हैं, हम ये wars किस लिए लड़ रहे हैं, हम एक दूसरे से नफरत क्यों कर रहे हैं, हम conflict में क्यों जी रहे हैं. But we are just seeing how ignorant armies of one nation clash with another by the night, and they do not know themselves. The soldiers themselves do not know why they are fighting. They do not know whom they are fighting. They do not know for what reason they are fighting, and that is why they are ignorant. Okay, or maybe they are ignorant because they think that fighting or wars are meant for bravery, but in reality they are just cruel, brutal conflicts that do not lead to any end. So, what the poet is saying, that we as humanity are swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight. We are confused, we are swept away, we do not have any certitude, do not know what we are doing, and we are just struggling and fighting with each other and in a constant state of flight, which means that you are going away with something, that you are negating something, that you are running away. And ignorant armies are clashing in this day and age by the night, where everyone else is asleep and they are ignorant and they do not know why this struggle is happening and why we are engaging in a constant fight. So this is what Arnold is talking about, End of a Beach. I hope I was able to make you understand this poem in some other way, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.